Hello and welcome, dear learners. Hope you are doing well. I'm Dr. Sheikh Bashir. The topic today I'm going to discuss with you in this session is Barriers to Communication, Part 1. Learning Objectives. In this session, we will discuss about barriers to communication, physical barrier, cultural barrier, language barrier, factors of barriers, and how to overcome all these barriers. Let's begin with the communication barrier. What is communication barrier? A communication barrier are defined as the aspects or conditions that interfere with effective exchange of ideas or thoughts. As you know that communication means exchange of ideas, thoughts and information from one individual to another individual. If there is any hindrance, if there is any obstruction, the receiver will not get exactly the words which the sender wants to convey. That means there are some obstructions, there are some barriers. The process of communication has multiple barriers. The intended communication will often be disturbed and distorting, leading to the condition of misunderstanding and failure of communication. Physical barrier. What is physical barrier? A physical barrier to communication can be defined as an adjustment or a physical factor that acts as a distraction to hinder the flow of communication. There are several factors of causing physical barrier. First is physical disability. Being differently abled, such as having visual, hearing, or speech impediments. Or sometimes there are some persons who are having stammering problem. They are not able to talk perfectly. So these are called the physical barriers. Second is architecture. And sometimes you have seen that some rooms or some buildings, while having the conversation, there is the echo sound, and this creates obstruction while understanding the talk. Third is distance. And for every communication, a specific distance is important. But when a person is far away from one place, it is very difficult to get the meaning of the words. And last is noise. Noise is of two types. One is internal, another is external. Outside, whizzing of the traffic, that creates problem while having the conversation. And inside, while you are talking and there is side talk between different people, the conversation is obstructed again. So how to overcome all these obstructions? First is choosing a suitable environment. An environment where you can talk, where you can communicate with each other without any obstruction, without any hindrance. Second is removing obstacle. There are sometimes the obstacles such as mobile phones ringing or two persons having in between the mirror or the wall of glass, which does not allow others to get the sentence or get the words perfectly. So these obstacles must be removed so that these physical obstructions will be removed from that particular place. And third is making signs easier to read. Example, you could supplement written signs with pictures and visual signs. As you know that when there are signs or photographs with the writing, it becomes very easily to understand that meaning. To be updated with the latest technology, this is very important thing because there are so many tools which has been used to come out from all these barriers. Suppose if a person is hard of hearing, he can use the ear instrument which will help him to get the sound very easily. Cultural barrier. What is cultural barrier? Cultural is the shared set of beliefs, values, behavior, laws, and ceremony by a group of people. As the world is getting more and more globalized, a large office may have people from several parts of the world, and they have different lifestyle, they have different nature, so they came from different tradition and the culture. And second thing is that culture acts as a barrier to communication due to its inherent influence on people's communication, styles, values, and norms. Factors causing cultural barrier. Diversified cultural background. As I told you that in some office or some organization, people from different parts of the world, they are together working there, and they have different way of their speaking, they have different tradition, they have different eating habits, they have different clothing habits. So all these are very much diverse, and they create a cultural barrier. Second is language and accent. It is said that even the same language changes its dialect and accent after every 10 kilometers. Third is behavior and nature, which I told you that every culture is having its own behavior and nature. And how to overcome now all these barriers? The first thing is cross-culture environment knowledge. Even some offices, there is some workshop so that we can learn each other's environment, we can learn each other's culture. So it becomes very easy then to have communication without any obstruction. Second thing is too much interaction in groups and run frequent meetings. So if there are so many persons, so many employees, they are working together, once they sit having the informal meetings, so all these things are taken away. Language barrier. This is another barrier. Language barrier means inability to converse in the language that is shown by both the sender and the receiver. That means that when sender is speaking a particular language, but the receiver is not able to understand that particular language, so this becomes a language barrier. Inappropriate words while conversing or writing. A small variation in language can lead to a closer misunderstanding between people. Factors causing language barrier. Number one is multi-language. Sometimes when we are speaking in a particular language, take an example of English. If you are talking in English and in the middle you don't get the exact word, so you put your mother tongue or the other tongue. So this also becomes a factor causing language barrier. Second is inadequate vocabulary. When you don't have enough vocabulary in your mind, so it becomes a barrier. Third is interpreting differences. You are explaining the things the way you should. It depends upon different people, how they discuss the things, how they interpret the things, how they are explaining things. So it is also a factor causing language barrier. Now, how to overcome all these barriers? Speak slowly and clearly. Whenever you speak, you should speak slowly and you should speak clearly. Second is ask for clarification. If you don't understand any word or sentence, you should ask the sender that I didn't get the meaning, or I didn't get what you intend from this thing. So after that, when he will speak you again, and your clarification is now done. Next is be specific, be to the point, be exact. Don't use exaggeration while you are speaking to somebody. Be patient, and patience plays an important role when you are communicating with others. Suppose a person who is speaking to you, you should listen him very patiently so that your reply and your message, it will reach you exactly the way the sender wants to. And then it's frequent check for understanding. And whether the person is understanding or not, for that you should again and again check that. How we can check that? We can ask him, hello, do you understand me? Am I right? So all these words, they help you to get the feedback. Learning outcome. What we learned today in this session: barriers to communication, causes and remedies, physical barrier, cultural barrier, language barrier, factors of barriers, how to overcome all these barriers. Thanks. This is all for today's session.